Hey there, athletes. Coach John Perry here from Team Wilpers. Very excited to be with you on this unscheduled athlete briefing. Apologies for the lack of a scheduled briefing this week. I believe I mentioned last week, finishing up a little end of summer personal travel myself here over the next couple weeks, but we'll be back to our usual schedule here very soon. So I appreciate you bearing with me here. A little housekeeping. So we're coming to the halfway point of this challenge, which is also known as kind of a point of the challenge in which that early motivation starts to wane. So it's even more important now than ever. Then you keep going onto that portal, keep checking the box and chasing that 100% completion percentage, because it is now, as it has always been, the best opportunity to put yourself in a position to be successful. So keep checking that box. So for our week 4 workouts, so there's not a lot to talk about here, right? So we don't need to break these down. We're looking at aerobic running. So what I want to talk about here is kind of our training curve in particular. So, and when we're training, as opposed to exercising, we're trying to create specific adaptations based upon that specific load that we're kind of giving to you. So part of that training is the loading. And so for 3 weeks, you've been working very hard. You've been loading, doing hard training. Part of that curve is also the unloading period. So in the unloading period, you have to reduce your volume. You want to reduce your intensity. So what this allows is your body to have a chance to recover from the previous 3 weeks, to continue training, although training aerobically, and to set the stage for the 3 weeks to follow, where our training stress continues to go up and up even a little bit more. So but in this scenario, we're actually a little bit shorter challenge. So we're going to come back and we're going to have 2 weeks of our loading cycle on the flip side, where we're going to be pushing after this. So when I have athletes that are absolutely nailing their training, they're not worried about these weeks. They're thrilled and excited for this weeks, because that means they've been putting in the hard weeks. They've stayed incredibly consistent during their training. And this is the reward for all of that hard work all of a sudden, that they get to pull back, hopefully be a little bit less stressful physically, a little bit less taxing and stressful mentally without all the workout structures. So I hope you really embrace this and enjoy it. So what I want you to do is really take this unload seriously. This is not an opportunity with the extra time to go hard elsewhere, to do extra strength training, to do extra hard cross training in other disciplines or other sports. This is an opportunity you want to pull back across the board, really take it a little bit easier, and once again, get yourself prepared and ready for the next couple weeks to follow. So I'm going to jump right into some questions that have come up via the group. So question 1 is about shin splints. So the question was, I had a flare up of shin splints that surprisingly don't bother me that much while running, but after running or on the bike, they're really loud. I've been doing some extra calf and shin foam rolling and stretching, also Epsom salt, soaks, and ice. Any other tips and tricks? So shin splints, a tricky one, certainly experienced by a lot of runners here. Unfortunately, a lot of people end up having to shut it down with the shin splint issue, but that doesn't always have to be the case. So the stretching, rolling, soaking is a great start, exactly what you're doing. So keep doing that. Also, consider cross-training using different disciplines to train the energy zones without the impact of additional footfalls over and over and over again. So I know you mentioned that the bike is also a little bit complicating, but you could certainly try elliptical, which is probably an exercise that most closely resembles the running motion. You could try rowing, swimming, etc. Something, once again, where you can train the energy zone without the impact of running. Consider swapping your running surface. So if you always run on a hard surface, if you're a road runner, it might be worth trying to go out of your way to find something a little bit softer, whether it's a track, crushed dirt trail, etc. Doesn't mean you have to go all the way to a dense single track trail, but you might want to change the footing. Similarly, if you're a soft surface runner, you're always a trail runner, you're always a dirt path runner, you might want to actually switch to the roads. The road gets a hard knock because it's hard and the impact is hard. But the harder the surface, the more stable you're landing. So the little kind of flutters in your foot to try to stabilize upon impact actually is a little bit easier because you have a little bit more stability on hard surface. So it might be worth doing that. Going to a treadmill is not always the solution. So if you're a treadmill only runner, keep in mind that treadmills tend to exacerbate lower repetitive stress issues in the lower leg. And the reason is the nature of your footfall is incredibly, incredibly similar on a treadmill. You're going to almost land in the exact same portion of your foot over and over and over again. There's almost no variance, even with the incline adjustability. The reason the surface is perfect is exactly identical time after time, and as opposed to running outside where there's a little bit more variation. So don't think that staying inside on a more controlled surface is going to be the solution. It might actually be the problem. You might need to get off the tread, go outside to a little bit more undulating terrain. Examine your cadence. So I know we've talked over the course of time a lot about cadence, some of the good, the bad, the ugly. So heel striking can contribute to shin splints, basically also overextending your stride, which doesn't mean that heel striking is bad. It just means that it can contribute to shin splints. So if you're a person experiencing shin splints, it's worth taking a look at it. So if you're having this problem, take a peek at your cadence. If you're a low cadence runner, maybe someone in the 160s, even 150s, potentially even just south of 170, is a little bit, would probably be considered a low cadence runner. It absolutely might be worth taking this as a point of emphasis as something that you need to adjust and bringing that up a little bit at a time. So just think that the more footfalls per minute, you get to minimize the impact per step there. So 180 steps per minute, you're going to, on each footfall, reduce the level of impact just a little bit as opposed to 160 a minute, where each, because of the overstriding effect, you're going to have more impact per footfall on that lower cadence number. So take a look at that. Finally, you need to seek treatment. Don't let this get worse and worse and worse until it hurts to walk, hurts to move around. You want to get with a PT early, and you want to figure out a course of treatment and a treatment pattern that can correct this. Like I said, it doesn't have to be something that becomes a debilitating issue if addressed correctly early. So seek treatment. It can be inconvenient. It can possibly be expensive to get in and see that PT. However, it tends to still be the better option than waiting until it becomes a full-blown injury. So get in there early and often. Next question here was how to not feel guilty that you're losing progress during the upcoming down week. So you don't have to feel guilty because, as we kind of discussed before, you're not losing any progress here. So you only lose progress when you tend to push and push and push without any reprieve, without incorporating these smart training tactics, because you're going to burn out and you're going to plateau. So you have to build these sections into your training, both your training week, your training month, your training year, as smart training tactics. So there's no need to feel guilty here. So training curves do not move in a straight upward trajectory. It just never is going to happen. Impossible. If executed very well, you're hoping for more like a stair-stepping effect of a rise, a plateau, a rise, a plateau, a rise, and plateau. And ultimately what you're hoping to avoid as best as possible is just a long extended plateau of no recovery, of no improvement, which is what you tend to get, exactly what you get when you don't ever pull back in your training blocks, once again, whether it's weeks, months, training years. So I actually had a great conversation with one of our coaches, Justin Harris, in our last All Access briefing. We talked a lot about super compensation curves, just of a week, month, year, as I've mentioned before. So what he really mentioned I thought was interesting was just that you not only are looking at these curves on an individual workout basis or individual week basis, but you're looking at an entire training cycle basis. And the point being, one more time, that there are always peaks and valleys. So when you push, there has to be a pull. And this is this week. So something important to remember, what I like to share with a lot of my athletes is the work itself, the stressor. You're not getting any benefit from that actual workout itself. That is a stressor to your body. 100% of the benefit comes in your ability to recover, get back to baseline, and apply your next training load in a time-appropriate manner. So you've heard me talking about the past that like smushing all your workouts to the back of the week's not great, pushing it to the front. You really need to spread those things out evenly. Figure out with your own schedule, your own training history, when you feel recovered to apply the next stressor. That's, once again, how you work those super compensation cycles. So just remember, it's all about the recovery process. The workout itself is just a stressor, so don't get too caught up in that. And our final question today, is about putting race pace miles into your long run. So I'm finally getting to this one after it was submitted a week or so ago for the All Access briefing, because I think it's a great question and one that is going to be applicable to a lot of athletes right now. So it's going to be most applicable for athletes that are racing longer, a little bit longer distance races, probably 10K and above. And the first thing is, this is an excellent thing to do, especially if you're getting really specific with your time goals, is incorporating these race pace chunks into your long run. Second, it's pretty advanced workout. So there's a reason we don't probably recommend it for most athletes. It's a pretty advanced workout. So we always have to be thoughtful when we're giving a workout. What's the benefit versus what's the consequence of that workout? And if the workout is going to take half a week to recover from, it's not worth the workout because we need to be training during that time. So if the workout is so hard that it's going to ruin your next training week, that's not a good workout. If you've built up to it and you feel very capable of handling it and also recovering in 24 hours and getting back to your training week as prescribed, outstanding. You're at a point to start thinking about this. So there are a few ways I'm going to kind of recommend to look into this here. And the first is just small pace segments in the middle of your long run. So just a couple minutes at a time of getting up to that goal race pace. So over the course of the workout, we still want the overwhelming majority of it to be at easy pace with just a couple minutes of a time of race pace. And in between those segments, we want really ample recovery back down doing aerobic training. So you're just kind of touching on it. And this is the best way to sort of dip your toe into a workout of this nature. If you're thinking about 10K pace, maybe a couple minute or two at a time. If you're thinking about half marathon or marathon, maybe like 3 minutes to 10 minutes at a time, maximum 10 minutes, probably more marathon pace. Once again, very ample recovery, maybe 1-to-1, maybe 1-to-2 work to recovery ratio there. The second, the definite upgraded version of that workout is just really sustained pushes at pace. So this is probably going to come in a little bit more often in the half marathon training, in the marathon training. So I shared a workout with someone the other day, but I sent to my buddy, it was a very sincere workout where I said I want 16 miles, 12 miles of marathon pace, which might seem very daunting to a lot of people. Seems a little daunting to me right now, but 16 miles with 12 miles at pace, if you're planning to run 26.25 miles at pace, 12 honestly shouldn't be that hard. So that's just an example of a long sustained pace, but this, one more time, is kind of an advanced workout. So start with a couple minutes at a time, maybe start stepping up 5 miles, 6 miles, 7 miles, 8 miles. You got to work up to it, but an example of just a long sustained pace workout. And finally, maybe one of the best ways for all runners to kind of incorporate that pace into a long run is just run a race. So find a B race that corresponds to your, the kind of energy zone wise to your goal race and go race it. So for 10Ks, you're looking at 5Ks and 10Ks are ideal. You know, if you're still building up the distance to 10K, you can't race a 10K as a test. You need to race a 5K. Feel super comfortable with a 10K distance. You can race these things every couple weeks and recover quite well. So 5Ks, 10Ks for half marathons, 10Ks and 15Ks are going to be excellent testers, being able to run either at pace or above pace while you're still building up and training for that half marathon. And for the marathon, half marathons are perfect opportunities. As a matter of fact, for my most competitive athletes, I beg and plead them to find a half marathon race somewhere in the ballpark of about 4 to 8 weeks out from their goal marathon, so that we get an outstanding sense of really where their fitness is and what their racing is looking like at the moment. So I'm a strong believer, as I've shared in the past, about incorporating B races or slightly less important races into your training calendar. So do remember, however, that this is an advanced option. So you should be very thoughtful, be mindful of your race history when you're kind of looking at your calendar, figuring out how and where to include these in your training schedule. Because once again, you don't want to wipe yourself out in a workout and miss any training time. That's a poor trait. Well, otherwise, that is all here for week 4. So I hope you guys have an amazing one, and I'll see you back here soon.